In this second video for Unit 1, Lesson Set 3, we are going to be using pie charts to look at budgets. And a pie chart is a graphic display that's in the form of a circle and it's divided into pie-shaped sectors. So for example, if you look at the pie chart to the right of your screen, you can see household would be a sector, education would be a sector, and this data is used to be represented in percentages. So what if we don't have a program to do this for us? Well, then we have to rely on some of our basic geometry skills that we've learned. So one of the first things that we should think about is a circle itself. How many degrees is it? Well, it's 360 degrees, and we know if a circle is filled, then it is 100% filled. So we want to use what we know about the degrees of a circle and use what we know about percents, since we know that 360 degrees would be 100% of the degrees in that circle. So to calculate our expenses listed in the table of Jeff's, he's got household expenses, education, transportation, and we have the percents, but we don't have the central angles. So we have to calculate those ourselves. So to do that, to calculate the sector size or the central angle, you would take your percent and you would multiply it times 360. So for example, in the first expense category of household, that is 40% of the budget. So we would take 40% and convert it into a decimal and multiply it times 360. That means the central angle for household, which would be located right here, is 144 degrees. That angle is 144 degrees. Education is 25% of the budget, so we would take that 25% in decimal form and multiply it times 360, and that means that would actually be 90 degrees. And we know if we use a square, that represents 90 degrees. And we would just continue to do the same process for each and every category. And when we're done, our percents should total 100%, and our central angles, since the circle is 360 degrees, those should total up to 360 degrees. And if you go through and add both columns, you will see that is indeed true with this example. Okay, in this Check Your Understanding, Martha budgets X% of her monthly income for rent. And we need to express the measure of the central angle for a pie chart sector that represents Martha's rent budget. So one of the first things we need to remember is that if it's X%, we need to remember to change that into decimal form. And you do that by dividing by 100. So the next step would be finding the central angle we know is a percent times 360 degrees, and that gives us our central angle. So we would just take our X over 100 and put it in the percent section, multiply that times 360, and the answer boxed in blue, 360 times X over 100, would be our central angle. Okay, in this example, we're given a pie chart and they tell us the budget's $800. But if you look at that pie chart, they didn't give us any percents. And we don't have a protractor or the central angles listed, so we can only guess what we think some of the information represents. So if you look at this, for example, to me, the fuel budget looks like it's about a quarter of the budget. You can also kind of guess that the train bus looks to be the second highest amount of money spent. Repairs looks like it's about half the amount spent on fuel. Miscellaneous looks to be about half the amount spent on trains and bus. And these are just some of the things that we can estimate when looking at a pie chart. It gives us a close estimate because we know how it's split into percents. So if we were to base what we know about this pie chart and can pretty well guess, and the fact that we know that the budget is $800 per month, if they give us information saying that the central angle for fuel sector is 90 degrees, we can determine a couple of other things. So first off, if it's 90 degrees, 90 out of 360, or 90 divided by the whole amount of 360, is a quarter. And that's what we guessed. We guessed that the fuel was about a quarter of the budget. Okay, we can also say that if we know that the budget, as we saw up here, is $800, we can find out what a quarter of that $800 is, which is $200. So we spent approximately $200 on fuel. And then one of the other things that we stated was that repairs appeared to be half the amount spent on fuel. So we can take the amount we spent on fuel and divide it in half and get 100. And if we look closely, repairs and parking appear the same. So we spent approximately $100 on each of those expenses.